Hey guys, so today what I want to speak about is using SSL certificate with your Splunk installations. So you can use your SSL certificate to secure your Splunk instance and also secure your Splunk services. So services like HEC or data onboarding, intercommunication between Splunk systems, things like that, right? So what I want to show you today is what are the steps that you have to do to encrypt your Splunk services and your Splunk web, right? So as you can see here, I have a test system running, right? I have my own DNS registered as test.flyingranges.com, and what I want to use today is a service called LetsEncrypt, right? So LetsEncrypt is a service that was started out in 2015 by a few employees of Mozilla. So and then it got funded by Cisco Systems, University of Michigan, etc. And then, so what is Let's Encrypt all about is they provide free certificates, like free SSL certificates that you could use on your system. So earlier, if you wanted a SSL certificate, you can go to McAfee, Kaspersky, GoDaddy, CAs like that, and then you have to pay upfront cost, and then you can get the certificate. So what Let's Encrypt does is you can get the certificate as long as you have a domain name for free, but the only downside is you can only get it for 90 days. So after 90 days you have to do a renewal. This is quite useful if you have having a system which you're doing some testing on, or if you have a system with very low budget, right? So you can actually use their service to get your SSL certificates. It's a very straightforward uh, way of getting the certificate. I can show you how it's done. So let me log on to my system here. So I have my server. It's running a Ubuntu OS as the base system. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow the documentation here. Okay, so I just clicked on get started with shell access. I'm going to use a service called certbot, right? So what it does is it's an automated system from Let's Encrypt that will help you generate all your certificates, right? So I'm going to select other, and then I'm going to select Ubuntu. So what I need is Snap for making this work, right? So if I can click here, I would need to find out I would need to follow the documentation if I don't have Snap installed. So for Ubuntu systems, Snap comes by default. It's pre-installed. So all I have to do is run this command. So I'm going to follow the second command here. All right, Snap is installed. All right, and now I'm going to install certbot. Right. So certbot is installed. Now once that is done, I can create a logical link linking certbot's file to user bin. Done. Now I don't have a web server running on my system. So the way it works is it is going to check if your domain name can be reached from outside. So my domain name is test.flyingridget.co.in. So what this next command is trying to do is it will try to do a lookup, and then port 80, this one have to resolve and come back to this server. So I'll show you what happens. Email address, I'm just going to put my throwaway email address here. Yes, no. Here I'm going to enter the domain name of my choice. So that is test dot. So I'm doing this on AWS, so I have to allow in access from outside on port 80. So here on my security group, I have to create a new inbound rule that allows port 80 into my network. If that is not there, it will actually fail. So you don't have to have this all the time. Once the command is run, you can delete it off, because we don't need a port 80 server open all the time, right? So that is done. So I'm just going to click OK. And that's it. We have a certificate. So the certificate is actually sitting here, right? So if you go here, so what I can do now is I can just kill my port 80, because there's no service running here. I don't want it running here anymore. And save. Alright, so the new certificate is sitting here on this folder, right? So if I do this, I'll find a few folders here. So what they say is your certificate is actually living in live, but actually if you go check in live, these are logical links, right? So even if you try to copy this thing, it will only give you logical links. So it is better to work on this folder instead. So you move to CD archive. So this is where all your certificates are living, right? You have your cert, you have your chain, you have your full chain, and your priv key. So everything that you need is actually here on archive folder, right? Okay, so now let's get to this Splunk part. It's fairly easy. So first what I'm going to do is, let me show you. This is running on non-secure, right? I don't have HTTPS active. So to activate HTTPS, what you have to do is we create a new file. I'm working on system local because this is my test instance. I would not recommend you working on system local. You have to follow Splunk guidelines and create new applications for this. Just because I'm going to flash my box once the video is done, I don't really care where I'm doing this. So yes, follow your recommended guidelines. So I'm going to create a new web certificate. I'm going to configure this. So the way you would do this is you just have to type in like this, and then you have to add web here. I'm sorry, you have to add settings here. So settings, and then you are basically enabling your SSL. then you are defining your priv key path, and then you're defining your server set. So what I have to do next is I have to make sure the files are in the right location, right? So I have to copy the priv key to etc auth. I just create a folder called LetsEncrypt and web certificate, and then I paste the priv key there, right? So let me create the folder, and then what we have to do is we copy the file etc LetsEncrypt, and then archive test, and the file that we need is privkey1 to this location as privkey. Okay, and now the second file that I need is the full chain. So we have the full chain here. All we have to do is move this one here, full chain, and then full chain. So we have copied the files onto this location. So if you can just check here, so we have both the files here right now. So once that is done, all we have to do is restart. So once the restart is completed, we can log into Splunk as a secure user, right? So that is all there is. So if you go back to the web UI, we can see that Splunk is running on secure. So this is encrypted, right? So this is encrypted by LetsEncrypt. So what I'm trying to say is, even if you are using a valid valid certificate authority like McAfee or Symantec, Kaspersky, or if you are with your vendors like your GoDaddies or Rackspace, the steps are pretty much the same. So you just have to follow it, you just define it, and then you just make the setting like this on your web UI, and you're good to go, right? So the next thing what I want to do is, so there's this service called the HEC, the HEC input. So what basically HEC input does is, you can send your data to Splunk Cloud as through HEC, right? So if you have data sitting on AWS or Azure, Teams, there are a lot of data sources that actually need HEC to work, right? So the way you enable HEC is, you come here, data inputs, and then if you click here, you can onboard your data through HEC. So we are enabling SSL, right? And then we can create a new token, right? So the reason why you would enable SSL is, some data sources like Kinesis do need a HEC to run on HTTPS. The same with Teams. I do know that they do need SSL. Without that it won't connect. So it is always better to run your services which are exposed to the internet on HEC or on HTTPS, right? So that is what we are trying to do. We are going to create a new token here. So we just call it test token. I'm not going to configure anything. So I'm just going to leave it at default. So what I'm interested is my token value, right? So now I'll show you what happens here. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to show you the command that we can run to check if the token is working or not. So if I'm going to pull my console here, so if I do a curl to my web UI address on port 8088, service collect and event, and then I'm using the HEC token that I created earlier, and then I'm going to send a test event, right? So see what happens here. It's going to tell you that the curl is not using a valid certificate, right? So if you do want to send data without a valid certificate, what you have to do is you add a -k in between, and then data goes through, right? So if you are sending data from Lambda, you can use your K option to send the data even if you're not using HTTP, right? So what we want to configure here is we have to send the data using the HTTPS with the certificate that we created with LetsEncrypt. So there's a few steps here that we have to do. The first one is we have to configure the server.conf, right? So what we have to do is server.conf. So this is what your server.conf looks like. So under SSL config, so we have to add a few settings. So let oh yes, before coming here I want to show you something here. Now we have to go to your LetsEncrypt archive account, flying legend archive. Okay, so we have to create a new full chain PEM certificate, but this one needs to have the priv key in there as well, the priv key and the chain in there as well. So I'll explain what is happening here. So the full chain certificate that is given by LetsEncrypt doesn't have all the values that we need, right? So we need to generate a new full chain certificate. So how we do it is we do a cat, and then we have to put cert1. So this is cert1, and then we have to add priv key. So this is second is your priv key, and then we have to add the chain, right? Then basically what we are catting all three values into a new file. So I'm just going to call it myfullchains.pem, right? So it actually created a new PEM file by catting all these things together. So if I do here myfullchains, so it's going to have a lot all the certificates together on this file, right? So Splunk is expecting that format, and it would need your priv key. So one thing that I'm not doing here is, if you check here, there is your priv key. So you can encrypt your priv key using a password so that it is more secure. For the purpose of the video, I'm not doing it, but then I would recommend you trying out the settings or work with your system administrator or your CISO and find out if that is actually required in your organization to encrypt your priv key. Alright, so this video I'm not going to do this since it is a test instance, right? So what I have to do is I go back to my, so now I'm going to copy this file to this location. So cp my full chain there and my full chain. I'm dumping the file there, right, in this location. Fine. Now what I have to do is Splunk etc system local server conf. Now I have to add these lines under SSL config. Right. So I added these lines so that SSL is Splunk. So we are enabling Splunk to run on SSL, true. So we are going to use the client compression, true. I'm going to use the server cert, the one that I just created. It is referring here, and the root CA. So this is the root CA. The root CA was generated by LetsEncrypt, right? So I have to copy the root CA as well to that location, right? So now we do cp chain 1 to this location, chain to chain.pem. Right, so all the files that we are expecting is here now. So we have the file here. So basically when Splunk restarts, Splunk is going to run on SSL, right? So that is the first step. Now coming back to the second step, what we are trying to do here is we are going to enable HEC with HTTPS, right? So for doing that, what we have to do is create a new file called web.conf, and inside that file we have to create something like this. No, not webconf. The file name should be inputs.conf. Inputs.conf, and then what I'm going to do is we type this in, right, and then we are referring to the new certificate that we generated. Right, so we're going to do this, do blank spaces. We're just going to say inputs conf use SSL certificate. Done. Right, so we have linked everything up together properly. So remember, earlier when we tried to call our server without the -k, which means it is checking for a proper certificate, it is going to give back an error saying that it can't be secured, so we can't connect, right? So now I'm going to restart the server again. So I'm just going to wait till the server restarts. So the server restarted, right? So now we can go here and we do a curl again, and then when we send it, no -k option, so we can send the data, success. So we know for a fact that the curl is running with HTTPS. So you can use a system if you want to onboard certain data sources from outside to Splunk using your secure HEC. This is much secure than running a normal HTTP, but do remember some vendors don't like LetsEncrypt. So even if you follow all the steps, HEC might not work because the vendor might not like the fact that you are using LetsEncrypt. So do check with your vendor if they do support LetsEncrypt. If they don't support LetsEncrypt, all you would have to do is you create a CSR on your So CSR is your certificate signing request on your circuit or on your whatever Splunk instance that you want. So the process is you first create your priv key, then you generate your CSR, then you submit your CSR to your vendor. The vendor gives you all the files, and then once that is done, you follow the same steps and you configure your HEC, right? So for my testing purposes, LetsEncrypt is fine. So if you want to do it on production, you can go with any of the other reputed vendors and make this happen. Final note is LetsEncrypt is a good service if you want to have test instances, or if you want to onboard heavy folders, onboard data through heavy folders, and then you don't have budget. But do remember, this certificate gets expired in 90 days compared to 1 year validity that you have if you buy from McAfee or Kaspersky or whatever. So they do expire. So maybe in a later video I can show you how to automate this process using Ansible, so you don't have to manually rerun this whole setup. We can just use Ansible to automate the process, and it runs on a cron job so that your web certificate is always encrypted. For now, this is the basic steps that we have to do on Splunk. Other applications are there, like if you follow Splunk docs for certificate and SSL, you can secure a lot of different services like forwarding service. So on this video I shown you how to do the receiving service, so that is inputs conf. So forwarding, you would have to work on your outputs conf. Then you can work with your, like if you just want your services, you can do that. If you just want your HTTPS to work, you can do that. So there are a few services that you can use with LetsEncrypt, and you can use LetsEncrypt in your environment as well if you're running on low budget and you just want a certificate for doing something. So that is the purpose of the video, and I hope you like this. And as always, you can reach out to me, and if I can help you out in some ways, I can do that. Thanks, and I'll see you next week with another video.